And welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Peter Winnick. I'm the founder and CEO of Thought Leadership Leverage, and you're joining us on the podcast today, which is Leveraging Thought Leadership. Today, my guest is Judy Weintraub. Judy is the founder of a company called Skill Bites, which I'm really excited to talk about today. She's in Valley Forge, PA, and really spends her time helping folks get their content out in a little bit shorter form than a traditional book, or a lot shorter than a traditional book. So, welcome aboard, Judy.
Thanks so much, Peter. I'm delighted to be here today.
Glad to have you. So let's just sort of dive right in. So it seems like everywhere I go, everybody is writing a book or wants to write a book or is thinking about writing a book on the one hand, and then everywhere else I go, nobody's reading books. So is it me, or is there a disconnect between sort of what people want today in terms of content, and sort of traditionally what we've been taught is the way to put things out in the world?
Right. Well, there are people reading books, but unfortunately, when they buy books, they don't often finish them. I heard a statistic once that the average person actually only gets through about 18 pages of a nonfiction book before they put it aside and then rarely get back to it. So, one of the principles or the niches that I've formed with Skill Bites is writing shorter books. So, if you can get all your key ideas into even a 50 pager or even a 30 pager, it's more likely to be finished by your audience.
Interesting. So if people are reading on average 18 pages, that's less than 10% if we assume a book is 250 page for nonfiction. And that takes a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of effort to put out there.
Exactly.
So your solution to that is to sort of meet the reader where they are and help your clients shape their ideas into a shorter format. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. If their main objective is to use their book as a lead generating tool that you're going to give out to people, they don't necessarily need to write a long book. They can write a short book or even a series of short books that are quicker to write, are targeted at exactly the audience that they want to do work with, and it's less expensive to get them published and edited and everything also.
Sure.
And then it's of course much easier for the reader to read something that's really short. So it's kind of a win-win.
I want to touch on something that you brushed through quickly there that I think is critical, depending on their objective. So,
Yes.
so let's drill on that a little because I spend a lot of my time working with my clients getting really clear about that. And oftentimes I feel like I've talked more people out of writing books than most other folks I know. And it's not because they shouldn't write a book, but maybe now's not the time. Maybe they're not ready. Maybe actually a book isn't the right vehicle to meet the objective that they have. So let's talk about those objectives. And if you're doing a 10-year research study, a traditional book format is the way to go, obviously. But if I'm a local professional services provider, a divorce attorney, an architect, or something, that might be overkill. The bar might be too high for a traditional book. So tell me about sort of various objectives and where a shorter form works better for everybody.
Right. Well, it works great for the business owner who wants to use the book basically like a business card. It's a lot more credible than a business card when you're a published author. It doesn't work as well for somebody, for instance, who's looking to get speaking
Right.
engagements because meeting planners aren't going to be real impressed with a 30 pager or a 50 pager. Their books should be at least in the 120 page range. They still don't have to be 250, but they should be thick enough that they're going to have a spine on their book. That's going to be a lot more impressive for the meeting planners and for the people in the audience.
So a little bit more of the thud factor when it lands on your desk, right?
Exactly. Mhm.
Yeah. So when you talk about the business owner, let's go deeper there. Are there industries where it works better, where it works worse, where it's not applicable? Where have you found the most success on behalf of your business owner clients from an industry perspective?
For the nonfiction business book, I
Yeah.
have found it to be more effective for people in the services industries. So it could be a medical practitioner like a chiropractor or a nutritionist, or it could be a life or business coach. or a leadership coach, somebody like that, or it could be somebody who has a niche, perhaps in IT or marketing. I have not found it particularly helpful for my clients in retail or in manufacturing.
Got it. Okay. So in retail or manufacturing, the product is not you, right? So you're selling whatever you're selling on a, clothing, or if you're manufacturing, ball bearings or whatever, not as applicable, but more in the services, you have an opportunity to explain your perspective, your philosophy, your methodologies, et cetera, et cetera. And
Exactly.
I would also think, and I'd love to hear your take, it's a bit of a tiebreaker, right? So if I was shopping for whatever, a plastic surgeon, breast surgeon, whatever, and I went to, talk to two or three, they're going to have their processes and their intake and all that. But one of the three left me with a book to say, hey, go read this. This talks about what Dr. So-and-so does and how he thinks and how he acts. I would imagine that could serve as a tiebreaker, all other things being equal.
It's a tiebreaker, but it's also a qualifier.
Okay.
If you've written a book and the person reading it says, "No, I don't like that philosophy," well, you've now saved yourself from having to spend time telling that person who you are and what you do. They've already decided you're not the right person.
Got it. Got it.
So it can help you save time from having to explain to people who you are, what you do, what your philosophy is. They can read about it in your book. And if they come back to you, then they're a much hotter lead.
Got it. So it serves as a screening mechanism, a self-selection piece where somebody comes in and says, "Hey, doc, I read your book, and I really, am aligned with your thinking around, X, Y, or Z," as opposed to, "Oh man, I don't believe in organic, and you're organic," or something like that. Well, why even bother to have that conversation? It's not productive, right?
Exactly. And I don't know, there's an awful lot of people, myself included, who spend time talking to people who then decide, no, I'm not going that way. And we could be spending more of our time with the people who are
Sure.
our target market, who really do like our philosophy and our approach and how we do things.
Excellent. So I like the concept of the book serving as a qualifier slash non-qualifier, right? Because it relieves you of some of that burden, if you will. If you're enjoying this episode of Leveraging Thought Leadership, please make sure to subscribe. If you'd like to help spread the word about our podcast, please leave us a review and share it with your friends. We're available on Apple Podcast and on all major listening apps, as well as at thoughtleadershipleverage.com/podcasts. I want to talk a little bit about time and effort and all that. So let's look at traditional book, whether that's self-published or published with a traditional publisher. And when I say traditional in this context, I'm talking more length, right, versus a short form model like small bites, and talk about some of the advantages from a speed, timing, effort perspective.
Right. Well, it's obviously a lot quicker to write a shorter book. You will not be able to get a traditional publisher. It's highly unlikely that you get a traditional publisher with a shorter book. If your aim is to try to get something out fairly quickly, then the traditional publishing route is not the ideal approach for you because it takes time to get a traditional publisher. And then once you have one, it's typically in the 12 to 18-month time frame before your book comes out.
So stay there for a moment, because I think this is an
Sure.
important point that people sometimes forget. If I woke up today and said, "Hey, I'm going to write a book and I'm going to go with a traditional publisher," based on what you're saying, 12 to 18 months for them to publish it, probably another whatever 4 6 months, who knows, whatever on the front end to even find one. That book's not going to help hit the shelves for 2 years. If anybody else out there
And
is
that's after it's written.
right, right.
That's
Yeah,
right. I
that
mean,
little problem of, of writing 60,000
yeah.
words. So now it's like, if you're like any other business owner like me, 2 years, I don't have the patience for that. I want something, maybe not tomorrow, but I tend to think more in, what can I accomplish for my business in the next 3 months, in the next 6 months? Not that we don't think in 2 year cycles, but that's a long time out.
Not to mention the fact that if you write a book today, January of 2020, that you finish, let's say, by the end of the quarter, say beginning of April, and then it's 2 years from April, well, is the book that you wrote in January of 2020 gonna be applicable in April of 2022?
So let's talk about that for a little bit. So again, business books, traditional long form business books, where you're talking about leadership principles, management principles, things that tend to be a bit more evergreen, may be different than you talked about healthcare providers, where the technology or the processes change, or there's a new teeth brightening something that you didn't even mention in the book, and by the time it comes out, by not having it in there, it sort of signals that, oh, maybe you're antiquated because you're not sort of cutting edge or state of art, and why aren't you talking about the new thing everybody else is talking about?
Well, there's 2 aspects. One is your topic gonna be relevant to your audience? And the other is your topic relevant to where you are, what your objectives are 2 years down the road?
Good point, right?
Which it just may not be. I've had enough people come to me with books that they partially wrote 2 years, 4 years, 5 years ago, whatever, and then, they say, "I wanna finish this up and get it published." It's like, "Well, is that still gonna help you?"
Right. Has your thinking evolved? Does it meet your business objectives? Exactly. Interesting.
Exactly.
So let's talk for a moment, if we could, Judy, about examples, and you have to give specific names of wild successes and maybe not wild failures, but disappointments that clients have
Okay.
experienced. And let's start with the successes because those are always more exciting.
Right. Well, I'll take one of my authors who's out in Illinois, who is a commercial real estate broker,
Okay.
and, he wrote a book on what business owners need to know about when they're about to buy a building.
Okay.
The owners need to know about. They may have a project manager on their staff who's gonna manage it, but they need to know about some of the biggest risks that are involved, so that they can make sure that these risks don't materialize and they wind up with a building that's not gonna meet their needs or liabilities or whatever.
Now, and then this is a commercial real estate broker who gets paid to sell me a building,
Correct.
and the fact that he's codifying, hey, here's some potholes to look out for. Here's some risks that you might not be thinking of. That's interesting, right? Because that's a fairly commoditized business, commercial real estate.
And by having these tips in the book and providing the book to business owners, he gets more clients. So this book that may have cost him, he actually had it ghostwritten, but all in it was probably somewhere in the 15,000 range. He gets more than 15,000 commission from one customer.
So let's talk about that piece of it then. So he's in a low volume, high transaction business. So I don't know what his average commission is for sake of discussion. Let's say that what $50,000 or something.
Right.
He doesn't need, the book doesn't need to get him a lot of clients over a period of time to have an ROI. If he picks up, two, three clients a year for 10 years, that's an exponential return on his investment.
Correct. Mhm.
Yeah. Fantastic. Now, conversely, if your business is, lower ticket, lower margin, whatever, it might not be a fit. So there's a business model alignment piece to this conversation as well.
You should be you should be planning on an average customer value, I would say, of at least 2,500.
Got it.
If your average customer value is lower than that, then maybe you should be looking at different marketing tactics.
Got it.
But at 2,500, if you're gonna be spending in the 5,000, 10,000 range to get your book done, you're only gonna need a couple clients to make it worthwhile.
And that's fairly, I mean, for professional services, for even life coaching or something like that, that's fairly low
Mhm.
as a lifetime, as a client value. Cool. So let's talk about examples where it doesn't work, meaning that the book wasn't the right vehicle, and or the process didn't work or something, but where it wouldn't work so well or hasn't worked so well.
Well, there have definitely been some issues with clients of mine who wrote a book and did not have any kind of marketing plan as to how they were going to leverage their book or promote it.
Got it.
And they have, not surprisingly, found that the book has not helped them significantly.
Okay, so writing the book is but one piece, and if you don't want to wind up with a garage full of paperbacks, you have to be thinking simultaneously about what's my distribution, whether that's giving it away as part of the sales process or online or conferences or speaking or whatever. If you don't have that piece filled out or thought through, then you're probably not wise to dive in.
If you think that a book is gonna be all that you need, well, it's not gonna get you where you wanna go.
Right. So it's not a silver bullet.
Right. It's not if you write it, they will come, unfortunately.
Right.
But there are so many ways to use a book besides just giving out copies of your book. You can include it with proposals if you're responding to requests for proposals. You can use it to give away at conferences, to get business cards.
Can I pause you for a moment? I want to go to the proposal piece because conferences seems like an obvious, right? But if you're in a highly competitive sort of RFP world, or even if you're not, and you identify your client's needs, you get your pricing done, you got a proposal submitted, and whether it's a competitive bid or not, I never thought of sort of that front end of that, like all else being equal. Not only did you send me a proposal, but you sent a couple copies of the book to share with your team. That's interesting.
Yeah, I had one of my clients do that, and she's a fairly small business. She had, I think, 8 employees. And, she was, a subcontractor to contractor on a very large project, 4 times larger than anything she'd ever worked on before, and
Wow.
she said she would never have been considered for it, but the contractor called her and said, "Because you had your book and I was so impressed with your book, I'm going to have you be my subcontractor on this job."
Wow, that's fantastic. So I want to spend a moment or two sort of segueing from the book as the deliverable to, are there circumstances where, as an outcome of a client going through the book process, they actually start to realize that there are other things that they can do with their content and thought leadership? So, yes, it lives in a book, but success begets success, right? So they realize that that worked for them, and maybe they start doing video blogging or other forms of content in other modalities to get them into a new market or differentiate the brand in various ways. Have you seen any of that happening?
Definitely. Yeah, the book is especially the short book is a stepping stone. It is hopefully going to enable you to funnel people into your coaching programs, whether it's group coaching or one-on-one
Sure.
coaching or your online courses or purchasing different services from you, consulting services or even products that you might sell. There's many ways to leverage a book so that your readership winds up buying more lucrative, products or services from you. But the key one of the keys to that is you need to have freebies that you offer, opt-in opportunities in your book so that people will give you their contact information in order to get the freebie. Because otherwise, you can't be,
Can't market them.
wooing
Right.
them. You can't promote things to them because you don't know who they are.
So in exchange for surrendering your email address to me, then I will email you a PDF of my ebook or whatever the case might be.
You'll get, maybe you'll get a free
Yep.
chapter of the next
Sure.
book or an assessment form or a questionnaire or checklist or something that would be of value to your audience. Because when you sell your book on Amazon or elsewhere online, you don't know who's buying it. You can't do any promotion to those people until you offer them something where it's valuable enough for them to give you their contact information.
Got it. Good point. Well, this has been fantastic. I appreciate your time and sharing with us all that you've learned. I think it's an interesting model, and I think it's something that lots of folks should be considering, as opposed to book or no book. There's now another alternative in terms of short form, depending on your objectives. So, thanks so much, Judy. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're most welcome. And just to clarify, I do a lot of the short books, but I also do the longer books.
Sure, of course. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Peter.
To learn more about Thought Leadership Leverage, please visit our website at thoughtleadershipleverage.com. To reach me directly, feel free to email me at peter@thoughtleadershipleverage.com. And please subscribe to Leveraging Thought Leadership on iTunes or your favorite podcast app to get your weekly episode automatically.